So we just So, Vassilia, to start the session off, I wanted to ask you about experience of loss and how you would characterize loss in its widest sense.
Thank you. I'd like to start with sharing the words of Dr. Colin Murray Parks, who's the life president of Cruse Bereavement Care. The pain of grief is just as much a part of life as the joy of love. It is perhaps the price we pay for love, the cost of commitment. To ignore this fact or to pretend that it's not so is to put on emotional blinkers, and that leaves us unprepared for losses that will inevitably incur in our own lives and unprepared to help others cope with losses in theirs. So Dr. Murray Parks is, of course, talking of grief through bereavement, though bereavement is not the only loss that where we will experience grief. Whether the loss is short-term or lifelong, the emotional, physical, psychological, and behavioral impact of loss is just as real. The dictionary defines it as damage or harm, injury, cost, hurt, bereavement, shortfall, quite a wide range of meanings. But this is how I see loss. It's unwanted, unexpected, a life experience that affects us badly. A life experience might be a permanent change or maybe transient, but loss is where that change to our life has a negative impact in any way, whether it's emotionally, physically, spiritually, or practically, could even be health-wise. So when I meet a person, I have no idea what life has thrown their way or how they've coped or not, adapted or not, struggled or not. So I imagine I'm meeting a mountain. And this mountain is made up of layers of rock developed over our entire life, representing life's experiences and the resilience we've developed through each and every one of them. Within this mountain, there's molten lava, our vulnerability, which is where we've perhaps pushed our emotions, our needs to one side. I can hear myself saying, I'll deal with that later, not the right time. I have to be there for the family. Our very natural reactions of living a life of denial or believing it's okay, it's not okay for me to be angry or upset or cry. So this latest experience of loss might be the experience that turns my mountain into an active volcano. So I'd like to put loss into context for today by sharing for you what loss has meant in our family, in our life, where my daughter had her second child and discovered she was not only bringing up her new baby along with his 3-year-old sister, but was also facing cervical cancer and all that entailed. There were some very real losses along the way, many not recognized, talked about, or even thought of as loss. And here are just a few that I hadn't even anticipated, yet were very, very real. She lost time with her children, bonding with the new baby, helping the 3-year-old adjust to a new baby in the house, not just because of the treatment, but the recovery time between treatments too. She couldn't continue to breastfeed, and that was such a big issue for her. Trying to explain to a 3-year-old why mummy is ill and the paramedics are coming, why she's collapsed on the floor. The role changes she went through from being a wife and a mother to being the carer to being someone who was cared for. Then the routines are disrupted for everybody because we all needed to find ways to cope. She couldn't drive, so for someone fiercely independent, she was now dependent on others. Then there was family and friends adjusting to the news, trying to hide from you their real fears. That loss of confidence, loss of opportunities, that's time with the children, job opportunities, future plans that have had to go on hold, opportunities you let go of that will never come back. Then for her husband, his mother-in-law moved in for how long anybody would know. Of course, she faced menopause at the age of 34, so whether or not she wanted more children, it was no longer her choice. For those of you who are domestic goddesses, then all your energy has to be focused on the health, not your house. That could be a big issue. Having to switch from being there to help others to being there for yourself, that can feel very, very uncomfortable. And one of the most important, impactful losses is that loss of control. Everything everything just felt different. There are consequences for the family and the supporters too. For me, time with my partner, time with my mother, financially giving up opportunities for work, and as a freelancer, that's a big difference. Watching her struggle emotionally and physically. She did both and hid it from me for as long as she could. I also gained time with my grandchildren, time with my daughter and son-in-law, a deeper understanding with family than could ever have been expected. Insight, perspective, and gratitude for the things I did have. Those were things I could hold on to and could count on. So important for me to get through this. So my experience of loss as I sail along my river of life, whether it was the death of my father, financial insolvency, real loss of losing a home, or the very real threat of my daughter's death, all of those are unique to me. But the experience of loss is common to all human beings. So one major question is, with all these losses, how do you cope? So I'd like to introduce you to Tigger, to Eeyore, and Winnie the Pooh. Hopefully you know who the characters are. But just in case, Tigger is the hyperactive tiger, Eeyore is the very sad donkey, and Winnie the Pooh the compassionate bear, friend to all in the 100-acre woods. So why these characters? Well, Tiggers keep busy, might say hyper busy, might not even notice the effect that he has on others, as the only way for him to get through and do everything he wants to do is to do what works for him. Whereas Eeyores wear their heart on their sleeves, with their emotions clear for everyone to see. And Winnie the Pooh might well love you with honey and share his pot with you, being compassionate and listening. And for a bear of very little brain, he does have some very real pearls of wisdom to share. So inside our personal mountain, each of us will have a potentially vulnerable person inside, hurt, frightened, unsure, angry, guilty, confused, needing and wanting answers. And to cope, we need to wear a mask to protect our vulnerability until we feel safe to share our deepest emotions and thoughts, no matter how irrational they may be. A safe place to cry or scream or shout or be angry, to express our confusion or ask the questions we dare not voice. So there are times when I'm Winnie the Pooh. There are times when I'm very Tiggerish, and I occasionally give in to my inner Eeyore, because it's okay to be okay, but it's okay not to be okay too. So dealing with loss in this wider sense for me is about regaining control of whatever I can, for however long I can, whenever and wherever I can. I've learned to focus on the things I can influence and let go of the things I cannot control. What are the losses we don't give ourselves permission to feel? Even though I'm going through chemo, I'm in a better place than so many others. Or maybe we dismiss our emotional reaction as being an overreaction, saying things like, I already have 2 children. If we don't recognize our own losses, then there's a very good chance other people won't either. So when we love, we connect deeply. Our deep emotional connection morphs into grief, that deep, abiding emotional and very physical pain, where once was a deep and abiding love. When we experience the loss of someone or something we care for deeply, that grief can be deep within our being. When it comes to loss, there will be times when you're deeply affected by it, feel the deepest pain, the most intense longing, be physically hurting, have difficulty sleeping, or maybe reach for the extra glass of wine or that bar of chocolate. It can feel as if you've got a head full of cotton wool wrapped up in barbed wire as you try to make sense of a world where sense has long since gone. You want to scream, can't you see my world has changed? Why me? Why us? But there are times when you just have to gather your wits around you to make decisions, to navigate through the endless practical steps, bureaucracy, and in the case of a bereavement, wills and probate and funerals, living arrangements. Yet somehow we manage to find a way. And then the pain of loss comes back and takes us down until it doesn't. COVID has brought with it a loss in the fullest range. We've lost control, lifelong health impacts, financial, practical, bereavement, just to name a few of those things, let alone independence. And these life-changing experiences are attacking us seemingly every day. And some days it will feel too much. Other days we can just about cope. And there are times we seem to be doing okay until we're not. So this is a very real roller coaster on our river of life. And this is normal, to be expected. Our family and friends will react very differently, even though we may be experiencing loss in the most common of ways. Our experience of it is unique. You might be Tigger, whilst a sibling is Eeyore. And your best friend has suddenly become Winnie the Pooh, doling out advice with the very best of intentions. So in the next session, I'd like to explore how that fear of impending losses, very real or anticipated, can impact us.